Wow, I'm a hot commodity.
話って。
実は一つ確かめておきたいことがあってね。
Uh-oh.
確かめておきたいこと？
ああ、ちょっといいかな？
おい、何すんだよ！
ちょっと調べさせてもらうだけだよ。
おい、やめろって！
なるほどな、やっぱりか。君のポケットから出てきた2つの紙切れ。これは何だね。
Mm-hmm. So yeah, you're checking me for the paper.
すり替えたんだな。
I did.
私はこうして自分の希望するナンバリングドアに入れたわけだし。
Managed to get through the numbered door you wanted. Why specifically did you want in here? Why specifically would you want in here? Is it because this is where... Well, you don't know at this point that Zero's bracelet is in here, I don't think.
じゃあ、
And you don't need it.
どうして？
Clearly Clover gets it.
なに、ただの好奇心だよ。気を悪くしないでくれたまえ。
くそ。
Alright, that's open now, because we had the conversation with Clover. Alright, we're getting there. Captain's quarters. The red file.
背表紙に何か書いてあるな。ALLIC。
It's kind of hilarious at how important this was after me getting stuck on this potentially being the hexadecimal solution for that other thing. I'm very familiar with this now.
アリス。ってことは、なんだよこれ。
That's why it's in hieroglyphs.
ヒエログリフだな。古代エジプト。
古代エジプトの。
そうだ。
読めるのか？
ああ、もう読めるわけ。
なんだよ。
Okay.
何か落ちたな。
There's the key
ウ
card.
ラヌス。
右下のところにボトムデッキライブラリー。
どうやらその。
ボトムデッキ。
Did we never did get the opportunity to go back and check this, did we?
確か薬品庫です。
Ah,
ギガントのへその下。
There we go.
知識の森を抜けた小部屋に
there was a library.
アリス
There was a
は
library.
眠っている
I remember that now. I straight up mentioned, I straight up mentioned, I was like, is there a library on the ship? I totally forgot this key card that we got. Yeah, it specifically mentions the library, but we never went back. I thought I went there with June one of the times, but yeah.
もしかしてへその下ってのはボトムデッキのことで、知識の森ってのは。
Yeah, beneath the navel, force of knowledge, that makes sense. So I did call it. That should have been obvious if I had remembered that one of the key cards we got was for the library.
だとすると、その図書室を通り抜けた先にアリスが。
どうしたんだね。何やら考え事をしているみたいだが。
ああ、ちょっとな。気になることを思い出したんだ。
へえ。よかったら話してみてくれないか。
まあいいけど、笑うなよ。
Ah, here we go. I'm gonna come at you with a big brain reveal. Clearly, Ace is Alice, and this is how you're gonna listen to this. Alice? Yeah, I'm on a roll. I'm cooking.
エジプトの王女のミイラにアイスナインか。なかなか興味深い話だね。
I don't feel comfy us telling Ace this.
そのタイタニックの事故現場海域から回収された常温でも溶けない凍りついたままの少女はオールアイス、アリスと呼ばれていたらしい。それを買い取ったのがゴルダイン卿というイギリスの大富豪らしいんだが、セブン曰くその大金持ちがこの船のどこかにアリスを隠したって話だ。
そしてその隠し場所がボトムデッキにある図書室の先の小部屋じゃないかと。
I'm starting to examine things about Ace that I'm like could potentially connect him to some of these things. Some things that I have noticed that could potentially connect your coat here I don't remember if you exactly said what was going on here, like what your job was and stuff, but your coat here kind of reminds me of like a lab coat or like a doctor's coat. It could also be like a detective's coat, but we already know Seven is the detective, not you. You also had intimate knowledge of the particular drug that we found on the ship that you put yourself to sleep with, and I'm wondering if you straight up work for Cradle. Like if you are a Cradle Pharmaceuticals person. That could make sense to me. Like I said, you're clearly the person that's doing these things, in my opinion. And you potentially being someone that straight up works for this company would make a lot of sense. And you have shown that you have knowledge of like medical stuff. I mean, quite frankly, everybody on this ship has like way more knowledge about things than they should oftentimes, but that's all I can think of right now that specifically connects you. I guess the fact that you're older than most of the other people. I don't know if you bear a resemblance to the Lord that has been mentioned or not. Ordain. And I can't find anything on like your clothing that maybe hints you here. I'm like looking for a recusant sigil from Kingdom Hearts.
まあ、ただの推測ではあるけどな。
A game theory, yeah.
まあ、淳平君、キャスレートという言葉聞いたことがないかね？
Cass?
キャスレート
CAS セルズ・アライブシステムの頭文字を取ったもので、要するに細胞を生かしたまま凍らせる技術のことだ。通常生鮮食品を凍らせると細胞内の水分が膨張して細胞膜を傷つけてしまう。だがキャスレートを使えば過冷却状態にしてから瞬時に凍らせるため細胞膜を守ることができるんだ。もともとは冷凍保存によって食品の味が劣化してしまうのを防ぐために開発されたものだが、
Is that like freeze-dried things?
全く異なった別の分野での応用も始まっている。
別の分野って？
例えば医療とかあるいは宇宙開発とか。
Yeah, like the freeze-dried ice cream and stuff. Is that what you're talking about? Or just the idea of putting astronauts in like cryogenic stasis so they can wake up once they get to their destination in like 8 years.
宇宙開発？
コールドスリープって聞いたことがあるだろ？
Uh-huh. Yeah, okay, it is going where I expect.
SF ものの映画や小説なんかでしばしばガジェットとして用いられるものだ。長期間に及ぶ宇宙旅行を凍ったままの状態で過ごすという例のあれだよ。
Yeah, I've watched a lot of Alien, don't worry, I know.
あ、ちょっと待ってくれ。もしかしてお前、アリスがそのキャスレートとかいうやつで。
That would be very wild if they had that technology back then. But it wouldn't be the first time in a game where it's like ancient civilizations had access to highly advanced technology. But there's also instances of people being way more creative in actual historical examples, like the creation of Greek fire, which was basically primitive napalm that was used by the Greeks as early as medieval times. That was interesting. I've done a lot, like, I've done some research into that, and specifically, like, Genghis Khan, one of the things Genghis Khan did with the places that he took over was he specifically wanted access to their scientists and weapons to make weapons for him. And he wanted access to Greek fire as well. I don't think he ever actually got the ability to use it, but I remember that being one of the things he wanted access to. But yes, it was effectively early napalm that was used. Like a sticky fire.
可能性は極めて低いが考えられないこともないだろう。アイスナインという特殊な氷が本当に存在するとして、さらにその氷が過冷却状態から一気に凍りついたものだったとしたら、
アリスが生きてるっていうのか？
断言はできない。できないし、するつもりもない。
Or she's a ghost.
私はただ可能性のうちの一つとして言っているだけだよ。アイスナインの融点は36度なんだろ？だとしたら、その温度を超えるようなところに彼女が保管されていたとすれば。
そんなバカな、自然に溶けて動き出したとでも言うのか？
バカなことを言っているというのは十分承知しているさ。だがね、そう考えれば 隣の部屋に横たわっている男の件を説明できるんだよ。
Didn't they say they traveled through the desert with the coffin and she didn't melt? I mean, I guess if they traveled at night, then she wouldn't. Because deserts get incredibly cold at night. So that's one potential way out of that. But they did say they crossed the desert, and I imagine a coffin crossing the desert would get above 96 degrees.
あの船長服を着た男のことか。
ああ、そうだ。奴は死んでいた。殺されたことは明らかだ。では奴を殺したのは一体誰なのか。我々7人の中には存在しない。犯行が不可能だからだ。船長室へと入るにはまず1の扉を開かなければならない。
I mean, whoever it was could just be Zero and could have done it before the game started.
その1の扉へと至る通路は地球の鍵穴があるドアによって塞がれていた。その鍵を開けたのは誰だったかな。
サンタとヤシロだ。
うん、そのようだな。だがその2人だけでは1の扉は開けない。ならばその後はどうだろう。
いないな。サンタとヤシロは地球の鍵を使ってドアを開けた後、そして大病室で1年、セブン、4つ葉と再会。俺たち4人がシャワー室にいる間、1年、セブン、4つ葉の3人は大病室で待機していた。だがその3人では1の扉を開くことはできない。それなら俺と紫がエレベーターに乗り込み2の扉を調べに行った時は、やはり無理だ。その時間はほんの5分程度で、とてもじゃないが誰かが船長室に行って戻ってくるのは不可能だった。
I feel like an important thing would be like how dried was the blood and stuff. We need forensics on this.
ということは我々7人の中に犯人はいないことになる。だとしたらあの男を殺したのは一体誰なんだ。はるか昔からこの船に隠れ潜んでいた人物と考えれば説明がつくんじゃないかね。
That would make sense. It's also interesting the role that character was even meant to play in this entire thing. Like, they were clearly part of the game because they had a bracelet, but they were just destined to die just cuz? Because they never met up with us. Like, they were in the captain's quarters. That's way further than any of us were, so they were clearly planted there for a reason.
そいつは船内の構造について熟知していた。排気ダクトやそれと似たような隠し通路の存在も全て知っていた。もしもそうだとすると、そいつにとってはナンバリングドアなんてものは隣の船長室に入るのもたやすいことだっただろう。
それがアリスだっていうのか。
I don't think so.
まあくまでも可能性のうちの一つとしてだがね。
All ace. It was all ace.
アリスは本当にこの船のどこかにいるのか。おそらくこのカードキーを使えば知識の森に踏み込むことが、その先は知識の森を抜けた先には一体何があるっていうんだ。まあいずれにせよこの場でどうにかなるような問題じゃないな。今考えるのはやめておこう。
Okay, now just the monitor.
ZERO なんだかバカにされている。どう思う？
別に。
じゃあこの男のことは本物のゼロだと思うか？
思うわけないでしょ。私言ったはずだけど。
Yup.
ああ、そうだったな。だがそのことを抜きにしてもこの男がゼロじゃないことは明らかだ。わからないか？モニターに表示されたゼロの文字、船長服、そして手首のバングルには数字のゼロ。どう考えたってあからさまに主張してるとしか思えないだろうが。
Yeah.
見て見て、ここにゼロがいるよ。この死体こそがゼロなんだよ。なんてな。笑えるだろ
う。そうだね。頭悪すぎだし。
Which, yeah, could be intentional. Like, put an incredibly obvious thing there and have you second guess, like, oh, this isn't, it's clearly not that obvious, and then lead you, like, to some other route that they specifically want you to go down.
いや違う。そうじゃないんだ。これを仕組んだ人間のバカさ加減が笑えるってわけじゃなくて。なんて言えばいいんだろう。
Should they didn't think it would work, which makes me wonder, why did they do it? It is interesting, because if my hypothesis is correct and Ace is Zero, then earlier in the game where they were referring to Zero as a he was actually correct and could have potentially been some foreshadowing, because at some point they mentioned we're not actually sure of the gender of Zero at all. So it is interesting that them saying he earlier was possibly a hint at exactly who it was the entire time.
これは真犯人からの挑発なんだよ。奴は俺たちのことをからかってるんだ。だってそうだろ。もしも真犯人が本気でこの男をゼロであるかのように見せかけたかったのなら、バングルなんてはめるわけがない。まるで私は犯人ですって書かれた看板を首からぶら下げてるようなもんだ。そんなことをしたら一発で本物のゼロではないと見抜かれてしまう。実際に俺たちが見抜いてしまっているように。ってことは真犯人はバレることを見越した上でバングルをはめたことになる。なぜか。
なぜ？
さっきも言ったが、俺たちのことをからかってるからだよ。
Yeah.
残念でした。その男はゼロではなかったのです。さあ、本物の僕はどこでしょう。悔しかったら捕まえてごらんよ。ってな。劇場型の愉快犯がよくやるような悪ふざけだ。
Yeah, the idea of criminals and murderers and stuff specifically leaving a paper trail because it is like a game to them. They almost want to be caught.
なんだかひねくれてるね。ひねくれてて子供っぽい。
そう、子供っぽい。幼稚なざれ言だ。だから笑えるのさ。さて、それじゃ本題に入ろう。この男を殺したのは一体。
さあね。
だったらこの男自身は何者だ。
Once again, this gives more, like, further credence to the fact that it could have been Ace who killed this person, because maybe the reason Ace didn't take the bracelet, even though he knows he could, is because he specifically wanted Clover to pick it up, because then that would lead Clover to, you know, being able to get out, thinking she can get out by herself, kill the people that she doesn't need, etc. Basically lead her down that path once she has access to the Zero bracelet. So it could be left here intentionally as a way to bait her into doing that, and then we clearly saw Ace just run off with Lotus and get off scot-free, so...
知らないよ。知ってたら教えてるし。
ってことは心当たりも
あるわけないでしょ。
一応所持品がないかどうか調べてみよう。四つ葉、手伝ってくれ。
え？
仰向きにするんだよ。そうしないとポケットの中が探れないだろ。たくしょうがねえな。
You clearly didn't mind murdering people in the future, girl. You can help.
これを
Yeah. Yeah, we know.
この男死んでるんだな。
Well, no shit, he's dead. I mean, I feel like that's obvious.
いや、なんとなく
Yeah.
改めて思ったっていう。
No, I get what they were going for. Like, Junpei having, like, it's like you smacking your head and being like, oh, this person's dead, of course. And then things click in your head and you're like, I hadn't thought about the fact that we could get the bracelet off because he's dead. I understand that's what they were going for, but it was very funny just to see, oh shit, he's dead. But yeah, I get what they were going for. Absolutely.
バングルが外れたってことは、この男が死んでることを示してるわけだよ。
そんなのバングルなんか見なくたって 一目瞭然じゃない。
一目瞭然か。まあ確かにそうかもな。
I mean, you could fake it, I suppose, if you took like a Romeo and Juliet potion, covered him in strawberry jelly and stuff, maybe, but that's a lot of work.
だけどほら、他の2体に比べれば、この男の状態はマシな方だろ？
Yeah, clearly the bracelet did not explode. Wait a second, I'm thinking now. Well, okay, never mind. I was thinking, I was like, how would the ninth man's bracelet have survived the explosion? I guess it could be damaged, but it could still survive the explosion. I mean, we don't really know how big these explosions are. I would think an explosion would probably damage it beyond repair, but one, we don't know really how durable these bracelets are. They just look like some kind of watch I would have worn in, like, 4th grade. We don't really know how durable they are, but I imagine, I guess, for the sake of the story, that they would be able to survive the explosion, because I was thinking for a second, I'm like, wait, don't the bracelets explode? But no, the bracelet's just the detonator that connects with the bomb in your stomach, and the stomach is what explodes. So it would have caused a lot of force. It might, like, crack the screen or something if it slams against the wall, but I'm hoping this is like a Nokia bracelet, and it'll survive it. Otherwise, my whole thing about Ace is completely out the window.
だからそれで、なんというか、死んでるって実感が湧かなくてな。その意味で言えば、不謹慎かもしれないが、この男は幸せな方かもしれない。
Yeah, because he was murdered some other way than exploding.
爆死なんて、あまりにもひどすぎる。ニルスに至っては、開放骨折まで起こしてたしな。
Maybe we don't talk about this with her right there.
おそらく、爆発の衝撃を受けて、壁かどこかに思い切り叩きつけられたんだろう。左腕から白い尺骨が飛び出していて。
ねえ、今、なんて言った？
Threw him against the wall, bone sticking out of his arm?
すまん。悪かったよ。ニルスのことは言うべきじゃ。
違うの。そうじゃなくて、腕のことを聞いてるの。
Oh, bone sticking out of the arm. He had a fake arm. We learned about this earlier. So it was a fake body. I mentioned the idea that it could have been a fake body. I did mention that idea when we first ran into Snake. I was like, well, what if, like, you could maybe, since we couldn't recognize the face, you could have just put another body there. Huh. Okay. Yeah. Because he had a prosthetic arm. We established this earlier. And they mentioned the bone sticking out of the arm at some point, but I assumed it was the other arm.
腕。
そう、お兄ちゃんの左腕、見たんでしょ？
ああ、確かに、見たか。お前だって、見たんじゃないのか。
見てないよ。見れるわけないでしょ。
Yeah, that makes sense.
あの時は気が動転してて、そんなこと確かめる余裕なんてなかったもん。ねえ、それって本当に左腕だった？
ああ、間違いない。
They made a fatal mistake.
左腕だったよ。
それが、開放骨折を起こしてたっていうの？
お前は一体、何を。
いいから答えて、
早く。その通りだよ。肉を突き破るようにして、白い骨が。四つ葉？どうした？もし何か気に障るようなことを言ってしまったなら。
Junpei's really slow on the uptake here, but I'm trying to think of when exactly we got told about the whole prosthetic arm thing. That might not be on this path. So that might be why Junpei's not jumping to the same conclusion.
ありがとう。
あの。
ありがとう。純平。
Yeah, I'm not getting murdered. Not anymore.
おい、どうしたんだよ、いきなり。
ごめん。嬉しくて。
何が？
あのシャワー室の死体。お兄ちゃんじゃなかったんだ。
Okay, I called that way earlier.
だからお兄ちゃんじゃなかったんだよ。
Them specifically saying the body, like the face wasn't recognizable, was just such a huge flag.
どうしてそうだと。
だってごめん、こういうの私の口から言うようなことじゃないから。お兄ちゃんはきっとどこかで生きてるんだ。
Well, I mean, he might not be. I don't want to ruin your moment, but it could have been a fake body and he's still dead. I don't know. There's a
そ
chance.
のことが私嬉しくてよかった。順平の言った通りだったよ。いつでもどんな時でも希望を捨てちゃいけない。
Yeah, the bookmark I gave you.
大切なのは信じること、そして愛することだ。
We cured your murderous tendencies with the power of reminding you that or revealing that your brother's still alive.
この3つが揃った時初めて幸運が訪れる。
それは
私これがあったから頑張ってこれたんだ。本当は絶望と不信と憎しみでいっぱいだったけど、でもこの四つ葉のクローバーがあったから順平の言葉を聞いてたから。
To be fair, girl, I gave you that on the other route, and it didn't save me from getting murdered by you. You still murdered me even though I gave you the clover. It's because I didn't figure out all the other shit.
ありがとう順平。
Happy for you.
礼だったらサンタに言ってくれよ。
サンタに？どうして？
その四つ葉のクローバー実はサンタからもらったものなんだ。4つのリーフワードもサンタから教えてもらったもので。え？
Uh-oh. Are you regretting that you were thinking of murdering him?
それって本当にサンタから聞いたの？
Or is there more significance to that?
そうだけど、なんか俺まずいこと言ったかな。
まずくない。全然まずくなんかない。むしろ私とお兄ちゃんにとっては朗報だと思う。
I was about to say, is this something that Snake has told you before? And it made you think of Snake? And okay, I'm guessing this is connected to Snake in some way. I mean, you straight up said your brother there. I heard the Japanese for it.
多分
サンタは四つ葉のクローバーのリーフワードを知ってた。知ってたってことは多分仲間だと思うの。
Ah, the other subjects. I see.
仲間。
私やお兄ちゃんと同じで9年前の実験の被験者だったってこと。
Okay. So yeah, Santa's one of the ones that were experimented on, one of the kids, along with Snake and you. I mean, it has to be younger people, so I kind of expected this a little bit once we got introduced to the idea of that some of the people would be the ones that were involved in the experiment back then.
だけどお兄ちゃんは目が見えないでしょ。それに私はネバダの実験棟の方のメンバーだったし、だから私もお兄ちゃんも船の方のメンバーの顔は知らなくて。
Ah. But that means Santa probably recognizes you two. I imagine. And Seven doesn't recognize any of you, probably because he's lost his memory and can't remember your faces specifically. But we know Lotus's connection is that one of her children were the ones that were involved in it. So I'm guessing this experiment is the thing that actually ties everyone together. And I wouldn't be surprised if Ace is like the head researcher that was leading the experiment at Cradle, and that's how he's connected. So Santa was one of them, Clover was one of them, Snake was one of them, Lotus's daughter was one of them, Seven was investigating it, and that just leaves me and June. So there's a potential that we were too, because we're kind of around the same age of like Santa, Snake, and such. So that kind of accounts for everyone. The only other one I can think of is the Ninth Man. And if the dead body here counts for anything, him as well. I don't know who the Ninth Man would have been to this.
ちょっとタイムだ。とにかく落ち着こう。な ?1 から順番に聞かせてくれ。100から始めるな。突然50に飛んだりしないでくれ。1からだ。1から順番に2、3、4、5と積み上げていこう。そうしないと何が何だかさっぱりわからないから。
うん。
それじゃまずは実験のことについて聞こう。9年前、この船で何が行われたんだ？
携帯形成場仮説って知ってる？
Oh, I've been calling it morphogenic. It's morphogenetic. I've been saying morphogenic. No, this whole time. I forgot a T. Well, and an E.
携帯形成場。
Morphogenetic fields. Yeah, I've been saying morphogenic.
じゃあこう言ったら分かってもらえるかしら。テレパシーのメカニズムに関する仮説。
確かヤシロがそんなことを言っていた。
テレパシーか。ちょっと違うんだけど、まあ似たようなもんかな。
そのテレパシーの実験がこの船で行われたのか。
そう。
God, I've been going for an hour and a half, but I'm like, I want all of this to be contained in one video if I can help it.
具体的にはどんな風に？
今と同じだよ。今と全く同じことが行われたの。
同じ？
ノナリーゲームのこと。この船とネバダの実験棟でそれぞれ9人ずつに分かれてゲームで。
Ah, and seeing if you could communicate.
すまん。全く意味がわからないんだが、ノナリーゲームとテレパシーの実験、この2つにどんな関係があるっていうんだ？
携帯形成場にアクセスする能力は2つの要素によって増強されるの。1つはひらめき、もう1つは危機。
Ah, you have to be in danger for it to work.
何か難問にぶつかった時、悩んで悩み抜いた末にふっと何気なく解放が見つかる瞬間ってあるでしょ。要するにひらめき、そのひらめきによって得られた情報がテレパシーとしては一番伝わりやすいんだ。それに危機が加わるとさらに情報は伝わりやすくなるの。
もしかしてその危機を与えるためにノナリーゲームが使われたと？
うん。それもちょっとやそっとの危機じゃなくて、
It had to be a death game.
本当に死ぬか生きるかの瀬戸際のところまで追い詰められて、それで実際に一人亡くなっちゃったの。女の子が。
I was about to say, this is Nona, right?
その子はお兄ちゃんと同じで、でも私はさっきも言ったけどネバダだから私はその子に会ったことはないんだけど、ただ名前だけは分かってて。
I'm guessing Nona or Alice.
その子の名前は
Ah.
おっと、どうやらまたしても取り込み中だったようだね。
God damn it, Ace, you stupid plot block.
一味よ。
それにしても君たちの心臓は大したものだな。よくこんな部屋に長時間とどまっていられるね。とにかく、淳平君、そろそろこっちの方も手伝ってもらえないかな。捜索に行き詰まっててね、力を貸してほしいんだ。さあ、来てくれ。
一宮に聞かれたくないの。話の続きはまた後で。
Noted, Clover.
おい、ちょっと待てよ。
おい、淳平君、何をしてるんだ、早くし。
Arg. Okay. Okay, that's it. Okay, that's it. Now this path is unlocked. Alright, let's see. Outside the room. They stepped out of the captain's quarters and into another hallway. The hallway stretched out in front of Junpei.
行くか。
Junpei rounded the corner and took off down the straightaway. He ran and ran and ran. At the end of the hallway was a door. He made straight for it. A piece of paper. He was nearly halfway when he noticed a piece of paper in the middle of the floor. He dropped his hand to his knees and quickly tore the paper.
A デッキの船内。
Map of the, yep, A deck. Okay, most of this is
どう
similar. He looked at his lung to determine what it was and nodded. Daddy began running again.
これは
That
取
was
っておくとして。
anticlimactic.
俺も早く行かないと。
He shoved the map into his pocket and got up to follow Ace, but something stopped him.
俺。
Yeah, okay. Turned around, Clover was nowhere.
何やっ
Muttered under his breath and took off. Yeah, as he stomped around the corner, he saw her. She was standing in front of the door to the captain's quarters, her hands on the doorknob.
四つ葉
Junpei watched she closed it gently and quietly.
何やってたんだよ。
別に。
別にって。
Clover had unconsciously put her hands over the pockets of her jacket as if trying to hide something. Okay, so yeah, and this is when she grabbed... Yeah, this is specifically when she went and got the, bracelet. But you have two. What is the second one? What is the second one? Do you have your brother's bracelet somehow? Snake's? As well? Because you have your hand over both pockets, and clearly one of them 0. Do you also have Snake's bracelet?
なんだよそれ。
何が？
ポケットの中。何か入ってるだろ。
ああ。これは、メモ。
メモ？
うん。船長服を着た男のポケットから見つけたの。ユンデの闇がなんたらかんたらって書いてあって。
なんだよそれ。見せてみろよ。
いや、今は。
Junpei wasn't going to get to see it. From the other end of the hall, he heard Ace's voice.
おい、淳平君、四つ葉、何をしてる、早く来い。
Uh-oh.
怒られちゃった。とに
Clover
かく、
shrugged.
後で見せてあげるよ。さ、いいから早く。
Before Junpei could protest, she was gone. Uh-oh. Round the corner and off down the long stem of the L. A note. A note. Junpei was curious, but there was something else that bothered
ポケッ
him.
トの膨らみ。どう見てもメモだけじゃないよな。
Yeah, that's what I thought.
何考えてんだか。ああ、もう。
Ah, more! Junpei just did the best to convince himself that it makes sense later. Sometimes that's what you gotta do. Alright. Junpei pushed through the door and found
大階段
himself
地図
where it
に
ends up. His IC after reading the map meant that Ace probably had realized the same thing.
Ichimiya wa-
Yeah.
この下か
Put his hand on the handrail and leaned over.
見て他、
Not just... Yep,
What's she
okay.
行こ
So now we gotta see how things changed. Glanced at each other and hurried. Reached B deck. Jun's face was excited. Something had happened that much Junpei could tell. In their situation, he was inclined to believe. Yeah, found the door.
最後の飛び
Okay.
とにかく行こう。ついてきてくれ。事情は道すがら説明してやる。
So the important thing here is if Clover decides to tell them to stop, we need to go check the other room.
あ
Seven turned and
あ、
jogged.
そういうこと。
お先。
では、私たち。
The rest followed.
いよいよです。
The relief and excitement in her voice echoed what each of them felt. Junpei wasn't quite ready to believe they'd really done it, at least not just yet. Still, if everyone said it was door 9, then it probably was. He could feel his heart racing. A mixture of anticipation and fear ran through his veins, and he could feel his legs shaking. He was doing his best to maintain a sense of healthy skepticism, but he couldn't deny that the prospect of escape was an exciting one. Okay, Clover did not stop us.
3人から5人まで。今行動を共にしているのは7人だから2人。何かいい方。
Yeah.
4時タイムリミットまで。
90 minutes. Okay, this isn't when Clover stops us
行き
yet.
ましょう。
あ
They followed. Uh-huh. As a group, they piled onto the elevator and rode impatiently down the E. It looked familiar. There was a metal grate between the two elevators. Seven grabbed hold of it and began to
さ
talk.
っき事情を説明してやるって言ったが、別に大したことじゃねえんだ。お前ら3人と別れた後、俺たち4人は左側のエレベーターに乗り込み、この鉄格子の向こう側へと降り立った。そしてそこから直線通路へ選手の方に向かってまっすぐ進むと、突き当たりには順平と紫が発見したっていう。俺たち4人はその扉を開いて先へと進んだ。そこには例によって例のごとくパズルの散りばめられた空間が2つあった。それらの謎を解いて別の扉から脱出すると、
I'm guessing that's the other path I'm going to head down at some point to get to experience that part.
そこにはさっきとは逆方向、船尾の方に向かってまっすぐ伸びた直線通路が横たわっていた。
あ。で、その途中にこのエレベーター乗り場があったと。
そうだ。
つまりぐるっと一周回って向こう側からこっち側へたどり着いたってわけだな。
That settled, Junpei looked around.
肝心の9の扉が見当たらないが。
案内してやる。ついてこい。
Seven began walking down the hallway that led toward the stern. Junpei and the others broke into a jog to keep up with him. Junpei wants to check the library.
そういえば
They had been walking for a while, June in silent step with Junpei when she spoke.
今こうしていられるのってサンタさんのおかげなんですよ。
こうしていられる。
7人が全員揃って9の扉を目指しているこの状況のことです。わからないですか？サンタさん、セブンさん、ヤシロさん、この3人の数字根を計算してみてください。
3 plus 7 plus 8, 18, and 1 plus 8 equals 9? Yeah.
9だ。
So they could have just went through the door.
そうです。3人は私たちを見て先に進むことだってできたんですよ。
Yeah.
でもそれをしなかった。
サンタさんが反対してくれたから。
Thanks, Santa.
紫や他の3人を置き去りになんてできない。それで順平くんたち3人を連れてこようって話になったんです。
で、さっきの右側のエレベーターに乗って大階段エリアに戻ってきた。
そうです。
それにしても意外だな。あのサンタが反対したとは。
I wouldn't have either, to be fair. Junpei felt his eyebrows knit as he considered that.
でも誤解しないでくださいね。
Perhaps June had sensed Junpei's
だから
concern.
といってセブンさんやヤシロさんが私たちを置いてけぼりにしようとしたってわけじゃないですから。軽くそういう話が出た時に先頭を切って反対してくれたのがサンタさんだったっていうだけで。
Junpei was about to respond when... Okay, here's where stuff pops off. Seven suddenly
着
stopped.
いたぞ。
In front of them stood a
ここか？
door.
ああ、
Junpei couldn't see Seven's face, but he could see him
他に
nod.
進めそうなところは？
ない。ご覧の通りだよ。
The library.
この長い直線通路の先には分厚い鉄の壁、左手には船の左舷と右舷を結ぶ横断路があるが、そこにもエレベーターホールと同じように鉄格子がはめられている。
We might have to split this up into two videos after all, actually, if I want this to be up at a reasonable time today. Because we're at an hour and 43 minutes of recording, but I'm invested, so I'm like, let's just go. I would hate to break it up in the middle, but I might have to. I kind of thought this would take like an hour or something, maybe, but yeah, it's going significantly longer than that.
なるほど。
Looked as though Seven was right. The door in front of them was their only choice.
上がったらさっさと行くぞ。
He pulled open the door and walked in. Junpei took a deep breath and followed. It appeared they'd been telling the truth. The first thing Junpei saw as he entered the room was the number 9. Like all the others, it was a rough thing made of red paint. The door it decorated sat on the back wall of a rectangular room. Junpei ran up to it.
9の。
It's a large double door with powerful styling. Something about it was almost majestic, and it made the red paint look especially garish.
ここまで。
Junpei grabbed the handle and shook. It didn't budge, but then he hadn't really expected it to. The red was bolted to the wall next to the door, displayed
間
vacant.
違いない。こいつが Q のナンバリングドアだ。いよいよだ。これが最後の。
You never want to see two hyphens when someone's talking in any game with dialogue. Are we about to be stabbed? Junpei felt a flood of emotion wash over him. Felt a chill down his back and his chest tightened even as his blood began to boil. There was a moment of complete silence.
後ろを見ろ。
He turned around.
後ろ？
Junpei could scarcely believe what he
な
saw.
んて Q の扉がもう一枚。
Oh, shit. Okay, that complicates things.
おい、どういうことだよ、これ。
His words came slowly and his brain struggled to understand what he'd seen. On shaky legs, he made his way to the second 9. It was a small door set parallel to the door they'd come through, but in the other corner of the room. How is this going to work? Wait, is that the coffin? Holy shit, is that just the coffin right there? Excuse? Because this can only end one way on the path I'm currently on. As far as I understand. I don't want to look at the flowchart for spoilers of potentially where we are and stuff. But there's not many options we have. So this isn't a choice of me choosing which door I go through, so something has to happen that locks us into one route. 9. There was no mistaking the number, and if any more proof was needed, a red was bolted to the wall near the door.
ベッドがあるってことは当然開かないか。
He grabbed the handle and shook the door, not because he expected it to open, but because he had to make sure.
なんで Q の扉が2枚もあるんだ。
It was Ace who spoke first.
どちらかが当たりどちらかが外れ、そういうことなんじゃないか。
That could be the case. I was thinking that. Lotus was skeptical.
どうかしら。私は違うと思うけど。
どうしてだね。
これまで通り抜けてきた数々の部屋、謎はいくつも散りばめられてたけど、そこには必ずヒントが隠されてたの。
Yeah, sound logic.
少なくとも勘で正解を当てろなんて仕掛けはどこにもなかった。
Maybe this has something to do with Alice and the coffin?
それが最後の最後に来て運任せなんてことゼロがしてくると思う。
だったらこの部屋のどこかにヒントが。
いえ、それはないと思います。さっき一通り探してみたんです。だけどそれらしきものはどこにも。
ああ、そうか。ということは。
ああ、どっちの Q も正解ってことだろう。そもそもゼロは Q の扉は1枚しかないなんてことは一言も言ってないんだからな。
脱出するための出口は探したまえ。
Yep, seek the door that carries a 9. Junpei began to mutter to himself.
Q の扉は。だったら3人と4人に分かれれば。
無理だよ。
Junpei blinked and looked up at Clover. She held out her hand.
手帳とペン持ってたよね。貸してもらえる？
Yeah, Clover's our calculator.
ああ、ほら。
Oof, my hand is cold right now. I probably need some food after this. Slightly confused, he pulled them out and handed them to her.
見て、これ。
Clover opened the notebook to a blank page and set it down on the desk. Everyone else gathered around her and watched as she wrote down a series of numbers.
わかった？上段は数字根が9になる組み合わせ。下段はそれ以外の人たち。考
Okay.
えられる組み合わせはこの8通りしかないの。だから
3人で Q の扉に入れば4人が取り残される。4人でこの先に進めば3人が置き去りに。そういうことだな。
Yeah, it's impossible to make it work. I wonder if the potential of having either Snake or Zero's bracelet changes anything, or in Ace's case, the Ninth Man's bracelet. Clover nodded, almost as if she was pleased with herself for solving a difficult math problem. So they might have intended for us to take the bracelets off the dead bodies, as gruesome as that is. The room went very quiet. Silence lay across everyone like a thick, heavy blanket. No one spoke. Their faces were blank. Desperate for something else to look at, Junpei turned his eyes to the room around
ここ
him.
は一体どこなんだ？
Clearly a chapel. The walls were covered with candles. The wavering flame made the shadows of Junpei and his companions look as though they were dancing. 2 rows of wooden pews filled most of the
まるで
room.
何かの式場みたいだ。でも一体何？
Between them was a strip of rich red carpet. The carpet ran straight through the room, ending at the door that pointed to the stern of the boat. The other end of the carpet?
祭壇なのか？
That's the coffin. It was a recessed space set into the wall between the 2 other doors. It's kind of crazy that June said she saw nothing in this room when there's a coffin with a damn screen and and like keypad on it. You think you'd mention that? Sitting on a raised section of the altar was a coffin. A coffin, yup.
棺。まさか。な。
But if it wasn't, then whose body occupied it? That was as far as Junpei wanted to pursue that line of thought. He decided not to think about the coffin for the time being. At that moment, Seven spoke. There was an edge of humor to his voice, but it was forced.
わかったよ、降参だ、降参。待ってりゃ誰かが突っ込んでくれるんじゃねえかと思って黙ってたんだが。どうやら、そんな度胸のある奴はいねえみてえだな。
どういうことだよ。
Junpei didn't understand, and he wasn't the only one.
もしかしてお前ら、気づいてなかったのか？
Somebody's got to stay behind?
ったくしょうがねえな。それじゃあ、教えてやるよ。さっきの四つ葉の説明にはな、ちょっとした抜けがあったんだよ。
Are you going to talk about using the bracelets of dead people?
間違いってわけじゃねえんだが。めんどくせえ。とにかく、これを見ろ。
Seven snatched up the notebook and began to write. Everyone else clustered around him, desperate for a look.
3人と4人で分かれるって条件付きなら、確かに四つ葉の言ったことは正しい。だがな、それ以外にも方法はあるんだよ。3人と3人と1人で分かれる場合。それが、
3, 3, and
ここに書い
1.
た組み合わせだ。
And Seven's the only one that stays.
そんな、お前まさか。
勘違いすんなよ。俺は何も一宮のジジイの真似をしようってんじゃねえんだ。大病室での一宮の件。あれがなかったとしても、俺は同じことを言ってただろう。
Well, I'm incredibly worried for the group that gets stuck with Ace.
同じことってもしかして。
ああ。だからそう、俺が一人でここに残る。
何カッコつけてんのよ。あんたバカじゃないの？
Lotus was the first to speak. That in itself was a little strange. She'd reacted much differently when Ace had
私は絶
volunteered.
対に反対だからね。あんたなんかに借りを作ってまで生き延びたくないし。
The rest of them began to speak all at once.
私も反対です。一宮さんの時と同じこと言わせないでください。私も同じ。その提案は飲めないよ。
私も同意しかねるな。英雄の役を奪われたのではたまらないからね。
Of course Ace disagrees. I just don't trust anything Ace says. Finally, they quieted down. Junpei
と
looked at
いうわけ
Seven.
だ、セブン。その意見は却下だ。四つ葉が言った通り、他の方法を考えよ
Seven made some noise that was somewhere between a derisive snort and a cough.
どいつもこいつも。
He was doing his best to pretend they were making a foolish decision, but Junpei could see the twinkling of water at the corner of Seven's eyes. That was when Santa spoke.
待てよ。俺はまだ何も言ってないぜ。
Till then, Junpei hadn't realized that Santa had stayed quiet for that whole discussion. I did think that somebody didn't speak up, and yeah. Something in his voice made Junpei
まさ
uncomfortable.
か、賛成なのかセブンの提案に。
Santa shook his
い
head.
や、反対だね。セブン一人を置き去りにするわけにはいかねえ。
Oh, you want to leave other people with Seven.
だったら別に。
一人を。
え？
一人を置き去りにするわけにはいかねえ。そう言ったんだ。
There was a dull shine in Santa's eyes. They were cold and hard. Junpei felt himself shiver.
お前、何を。
わからねえのか。一人じゃダメなんだよ。あと二人必要なんだ。セブンを加えて三人。三人を置き去りにする。それが俺からの提案。いや、命令だ。
And why are you so confident in this? Is your number like super needed for the 9 doors? Is that why you feel like you have the power to make this call?
命令って。勝手に決めんじゃねえよ。誰がお前なんかの命令に従うかよ。
従うさ。あと3秒も経てば従わざるを得なくなる。
Oh shit.
なんだと。
3、2、1。
Santa was so fast, Junpei could barely see him. Uh-oh. So this is why Santa insisted that we go get everybody, huh? Wasn't doing it out of the goodness of his heart? When he moved, it was almost like watching a dance. His feet moving like lightning. He spun and... What are you doing? Capoeira? Like, what, are you a martial artist? Ah. You have a gun. Where did you get the gun? I was thinking maybe a gun. And now June has a gun to her head.
な？言った通りになっただろ？
His lips curled into a cruel, mocking smile. A shudder traveled the length of Junpei's spine. Yeah, I mean, I could kind of see that Santa was potentially doing something when June mentioned that it was Santa that insisted on this, so... I'm guessing the reason he specifically took June hostage is he's going to try and make me, Seven, and June... me, Seven, and June stay. That's why he specifically grabbed her. His chest froze and he could feel his breath go stale in his lungs. Nothing made sense. Junpei felt as though his head were about to explode. Santa's sudden change in attitude, saying that he needed 2 more? The gun in his right hand, a revolver. Santa grabbed June from behind and pressed what Junpei's shaken brain identified as a revolver roughly against her temple.
なんだよ。なんなんだよ、それはよ。
Where on earth had Santa possibly found a gun? I am curious about that. Junpei's questions roared in his mind, but his mouth refused to ask them. Seven spoke, almost as though he had sensed Junpei's
あ
confusion.
の部屋で見つけた銃だな。
あの部屋。
6の扉の先にあった空間のことだ。こん
Ah.
なことになるなら奪っておくべきだったぜ。
今さらおっせんだよ、このテクノボーが。
Rude? Rude? I mean, honestly, I wouldn't talk shit to Seven. He's probably the one that stands the best chance of beating the absolute shit out of you here. Along with probably Ace, I would say. Interesting. I mean, yeah, it's always been a red flag in my head anytime there was anything in the rooms that could be considered a weapon. But I didn't expect just a straight-up gun to be on the table. Like, I expected people to take the knives from, like, that one room that I went into with Santa and Lotus. Mixture of fury and frustration twisted Seven's face and he glared at Santa. Santa, for his part, didn't so much as flinch. The corner of his lips twitched into a slightly wider smile. Then the smile faded and he began to move. He walked backward, dragging June with him. Before long, his back was resting against the door. On the wall next to him was the red. Put his hand on the scanner panel quickly and then forced June to do the same. Okay, so wait, that's why you wanted June.
さてと、それじゃあ命令に従ってもらおうか。
Yep, they've already identified now. He forced everyone's hand.
一宮、ヤシロ、喜べ。選ばれたのはお前ら二人だ。
Okay, so it's me, Clover, and Seven.
さあ、 認証。
Yeah, that was what Santa admit when he said he needed two
Oi.
more.
聞こえなかったのか。
Santa's eyes narrowed to slits. He glared at Ace and Lotus. They stayed frozen like deer caught in the headlights of an oncoming
そう
car.
か。仕方ねえな。弾を無駄にしたくはなかったんだが。
No sooner were the words out of Santa's mouth than his hand twitched. Is he just going to shoot June now that she's already authenticated? And the gun roared. A section of the floor exploded, scattering wooden splinters across the floor. This would hurt all of our ears a ton, especially being trapped in a room. A thin plume of smoke snaked out of the hole in the floor. It's also a revolver, so it's like, I mean, I don't know if it's like a Magnum or something, but that's a loud gunshot. There could be no doubt that the gun was real and worked.
撃ったどうしてなんでサンタが
Clover's voice spoke of betrayal and disbelief. Yeah, because you know he was also involved in the experiment.
サンタは私たちの仲間だったはずで
あ？
クローバーのリーフワード知ってたんでしょ
Santa's cheek twitched, almost
何
imperceptibly.
のことだ。さっぱりわからね
そんなはず
え。うるせえ！ガタガタ言ってんじゃねえよこのクソガキが！てめえのクソみたいな脳みそをクソみたいにぶちまけてやろうか？
Flecks of spit flew from Santa's mouth, his face twisted with rage. Yeah, I've heard many a character talk like that playing the Yakuza games, so... Clover recoiled, her eyes wide. When she spoke, her voice was very small.
サンタ
He snorted, then shook his head vigorously and turned to face Ace and Lotus.
ほら何やってんだよジジイババア。さっさとこっちに来て認証しろや。それともあれか？猛録して耳が遠くなってんのか？あ？
Ace and Lotus still didn't move. It almost seemed as if they couldn't move. June's face was pale behind Santa's arm. Her eyes were wild and her chest heaved with every quick breath, like an animal cornered by a predator. Junpei's mind worked furiously. What were they going to do? Then he realized something. There was nothing they needed to do. There was nothing to debate. June's safety was the first priority. That much was obvious. Doing as Santa had commanded meant that she would be safe from at least two threats. She wouldn't be shot, and she would leave the ship alive, along with Santa, Ace, and Lotus. There's only one thing for Junpei to do. I mean, there's no guarantee Santa wouldn't just kill them after.
それしか
He turned to Ace and
Hanama.
Lotus.
言ってやってくれ。
え？
そんな
何言ってるんですかここに取り残されたら純平君純平君だけじゃなくて四つ葉ちゃんもセブンさんだって
分かってる。だが俺たちのことなら心配するな。なあセブン。
ノーよ任せとけ。
I don't think Clover's gonna like being volunteered for this.
サンタの野郎の言いなりになるのはヘドが出るぐらいムカつくけどな。
私のことも心配しなくて平気だからまだやらなきゃいけないことが残ってるし
Yeah.
ダメですダメケチュウヤさんヤチロさん来ないで私のことなんか構わないでお願い
I'm sure Ace is just having a good time watching all this unfold. June was almost crying. Junpei walked around behind Ace and Lotus. He gently placed a hand on each of their shoulders and pushed them toward the door. They almost stumbled, then righted themselves and took another step, and another. They turned around and Junpei nodded.
ああ。
Ace and Lotus turned around again and walked slowly toward the door where Santa was waiting for them. Through what seemed like an eternity, they stopped in front of the door marked 9. Santa smiled.
さあスキャナーパネルに手のひらを。おいおいこの後に及んで何をためらう必要がある。俺は本気だぜ。この女を殺したって別に構わねえんだ。レッドは生体認証を使ってるわけじゃねえからな。 バングルさえありゃ十分なんだよ。
Okay, yeah, there's that reveal for everybody.
さあ、分かったら認証を。これで最後だ。次はないと思うよ。
He shoved the revolver harder against Shun's head and she winced. Ace sighed, defeated, and placed his hand on the scanner. Lotus went next. Lotus glared at Santa and slammed her hand onto the scanner. Fourth asterisk blinked on.
上出来だ。それじゃあヤシロ、レバーを下ろしてくれ。扉が開いたらすぐに飛び込むんだ。妙な真似はするなよ。分かってるな。
Junpei could almost hear Lotus's teeth grind. The door slid open. I mean, I feel like between the three of them, they could maybe overpower him, but since he does have a hostage, that's a little bit of a scary thing to do, obviously. Door slid open. Door number 9 opened at last. It opened with a low, powerful rumble, a drum roll to welcome the chosen few. Lotus and Ace walked through the door, their eyes furious but defeated. Santa waited until they were all the way inside, then hauled himself and June across the threshold. 6, 7, 8. Yeah, you gotta run with the hostage. Jana, yeah. After exactly 9 seconds, the door swung shut. The gust of air it created caused the candles on the altar to flicker and die. The room fell silent. Junpei, Clover, and Seven had been left behind. Clover looked down at her hand and traced with her finger the faint blue veins that crisscrossed them. Seven shoved his arms into the front of his overalls and scratched his stomach. No one spoke. Silence made the air feel thick and oppressive. Desperate for something, anything to occupy his mind, Junpei walked to the larger of the 2 9 doors. Maybe we can still get through this? With the bracelets that, she has? No, that's not going to help us, really. Unless she has snakes, like I mentioned. Then it possibly would. What is, 2 plus 5 plus 7 plus 4. That does work! That does work. If she has snakes, we can get through this door. Straight up. So I hope she has Snake's bracelet. Or 7 does. Because that would function. Red engaged. He moved to the smaller door. The red vacant. The digital root of the remaining people was 7. 5 plus 4 plus 7, yep. There was no possible way for them to open the door with a 9 on it, unless Junpei touched the surface of the door. He thought about June, about Akane Kuroshiki. Was she safe? Was all that mattered to him. If she was alive, if she escaped this horrible boat. That was what Junpei prayed for. Simon came up next to him. He pulled off his hat, scratched his head, and sighed.
どうするよ、順平。
どうするも何も。
Seven opened his mouth to respond when a noise echoed through the room. Someone was pounding on something vigorously. It wasn't mechanical, it was certainly human. Junpei and Seven looked at one another.
何の音だ?
し、黙って。
Clover motioned to Seven to be quiet. She put one finger to her lips and closed her eyes in concentration. 3 of them listened, trying to determine where the sound was coming from.
どこから聞こえて
Oh
くる
god, is it the coffin? I was thinking it's one of them beating on the door, but it better not be the coffin.
まさか。
おい、この棺の中から聞こえてくるみたいだぜ。
わかってる。
開けてみよう。
開けるって。
その筋肉は見せかけ？
力ずくでこじ開けろってのか?
I don't think he can.
いいからとにかく試してみよう。
Junpei and Seven grabbed hold of the coffin. They tried to get a good grip with what little purchase they could find and pulled with all their strength. Wait, is this actually Snake? Is Snake the one in the coffin here, the real Snake? That would explain why we would get the second bracelet, because I'm trying to remember if they even said there was a bracelet on the body when we found supposedly Snake's corpse.
ダメだ。びくともしないぜ。
There was some sort of keypad attached. Its purpose would not have been difficult to determine. Their eyes were almost immediately drawn to it.
こいつか。
みたいだな。
暗証番号を入力しないと開かない。そういうこと？
だと思う。
The noise wasn't stopping. In fact, it was getting louder. Yeah, you might be running out of air in there.
中に誰がいるのかわからないが、とにかく早く出してやらないと。
って言っても、どうすりゃいいんだ。
暗証番号がわからない限り、どうしようもないか。
They couldn't even tell how many numbers the passcode needed
ど
to
こ
be.
かにヒントがあるんじゃないの？
ああ、探してみよう。
Alright. Unfortunately, there didn't seem to be anything near the coffin. Clover ran to examine the pews, and Seven investigated the desk, but they turned up nothing.
ね。
そう簡単にはいかないが。
Do we maybe need to go to the library with my keycard? Sound still wouldn't stop. It wasn't a noise that belonged in that room.
何番なんだ。どうすればいい。どうすればわかる。
Maybe it's 99, or just 9, because there's 2 9
この番
doors.
号を知るためには、一体ど。
Ooh, interesting shot. To be continued. What? Huh? I was trying not to cliffhang the video. The game cliffhanged it for me. Unfortunately, that's the wrong answer. Actually, I'm Santa? Wait, what? Laboratory? Are you just gonna give up? What the hell is happening? I'm guessing that's just the ending. Now it is time. Let our game begin. I'm guessing that's just the ending. We didn't have the knowledge we needed to open... Yeah. Okay, we just didn't have the knowledge we needed to open the coffin, so we die there. And that's why there's a split on the other path. Specifically. Okay, I'm guessing it's the actual snake that's in that, and Snake's going to come out, help us through that door if Santa pulls the same thing, which I'm guessing he is. Yeah, I would love to save my playthrough. That's just a coffin ending, yeah. Okay, well there's 3 endings left. Yeah. Okay, wait, so it's saying we got there, but we didn't have the knowledge that we needed to actually unlock the coffin. So what does that mean? Does that mean there was nothing we could do there? This one's yellow. I don't know what potential choices I could make differently that would have led to that, but I'm guessing if we go down these paths, maybe I can do something there? Alright, well the important part is we're done. We're done with this episode. This episode is 2 hours and 12 minutes, and I'm definitely gonna have to split that up into like 2 or 3. But, alright, we're done. A lot of cool, lot of fun stuff there. It's interesting to see stuff start to come together here, so... I hope you've enjoyed this episode, and, yeah, I'll see you next time for some more.